The pre-dawn mist embraced the crimson brick structures of Westbridge, a tranquil district bordering Boston, where the pace of life felt noticeably more deliberate than in the metropolis. Along its primary thoroughfare, Main Street, generations-old family enterprises stood as enduring symbols of small-town America's fortitude against economic tides. Situated amidst these enduring businesses was an unassuming three-story edifice, its gleaming brass plate proclaiming Vance Law Associates. Eleanor Vance, known as Elle to her closest confidants, arrived at her practice while the streetlights still cast their glow against the fading night. The familiar creak of the building's ancient wooden floors welcomed her as she ascended the staircase, her heels producing a rhythmic cadence that echoed through the deserted hallway. At 45, Elle exuded the composed self-assurance of someone entirely certain of her identity and convictions. Her firm occupied the entire third floor, not due to its vastness, but because she highly valued discretion. The area was impeccably arranged. Legal volumes lined rich mahogany shelves, framed certifications adorned the walls, and a broad window offered a view of Main Street. Nothing ostentatious, nothing superfluous, much like Elle herself. She placed her leather brief, a graduation gift from her father after she passed the bar, and gathered her auburn hair into a neat ponytail, a customary action signifying her shift from Eleanor to Attorney Vance. The tightly pulled ponytail emphasized her distinct features: prominent cheekbones, a straight nose, and eyes that seemed to fluctuate between gray and blue depending on the ambient light. Her countenance bore the subtle lines etched by years of intense focus and resolve, yet a youthful vitality in her movements belied her age. Sunrise bathed the office in golden hues as Elle reviewed her agenda. The Rodriguez file lay open on her desk, detailing an elderly couple's struggle against eviction from their home of 3 decades. Beside it rested the Lee family's case, small business proprietors whose property was being targeted for redevelopment. Both families, along with a dozen others, were contending with Summit Heights Developments, a corporate behemoth possessing vast financial resources and even more profound political ties. The telephone rang, shattering the morning's quiet. "Vance," she answered, her tone sharp. "Good morning, counselor." The voice belonged to Detective Ben Carter, a 20-year veteran of the Boston Police Department. "Just confirming our coffee meeting for this afternoon. 3 o'clock at Miller's Diner." Elle confirmed, a faint smile softening her professional demeanor. "Yes, Ben. And please bring those property records we discussed. They're already in my brief. See you then." Elle returned to her documents, but her gaze drifted toward the window. Across the street, a dark SUV with tinted windows was parked. It hadn't been there the previous day. She made a mental note, then resumed her work, appearing unperturbed. Only the slightest alteration in her posture, a straightening of her spine, a subtle tension in her shoulders, might have betrayed her heightened vigilance to a discerning observer. By midday, Elle had conducted 2 client consultations and submitted a motion to postpone the Rodriguez family's eviction. Her modest reception area now held Mrs. Lee, a petite woman in her 60s, whose hands trembled slightly as she clutched a folder of papers. "Thank you for seeing me again, Ms. Vance," Mrs. Lee said, her voice carrying an accent that 50 years in America hadn't erased. "My grandson found these papers in my husband's old files before he passed." Elle accepted the folder with a respectful nod. Mr. Lee had died of a heart attack just 3 days after receiving Summit Heights' initial offer to purchase their family restaurant. The timing had always struck Elle as suspicious. "I'll review these meticulously, Mrs. Lee," Elle promised, her voice gentle yet firm. "Please try not to worry." After Mrs. Lee departed, Elle secured her office door and spread the documents across her desk. Property deeds, tax records, and, most intriguingly, correspondence between the late Mr. Lee and city officials dating back to the 1980s. As she pieced together the narrative, Elle's expression hardened. The documents revealed a pattern of systematic harassment against immigrant business owners spanning decades, with varying corporate names but consistent tactics. Elle meticulously photographed each document before securing them in her safe. Then she did something peculiar. She walked to the restroom, closed the door, and turned on the faucet. From her jacket pocket, She retrieved a small, unassuming phone, not the smartphone her clients knew her to use, and dialed a number from memory. "It's me," she stated, her voice dropping half an octave. "We're at phase 2. I need everything you have on Summit Heights board members, especially Richard Thorne." The reply was brief. Elle simply said, "Understood," before disconnecting. When she emerged from the restroom, she was once again Attorney Vance, composed, professional, ready for her next appointment. The transition was seamless, perfectly executed. But there was a new quality in her eyes now. A coldness, a calculated intensity that hadn't been present before. Outside her window, the dark SUV remained. Miller's Diner had been serving the finest coffee in Westbridge since 1962. Its worn leather booths and chrome accents remained unchanged since the Kennedy administration. Precisely why Elle favored it. Places steeped in history rarely held surprises. Detective Ben Carter was already seated in the corner booth when Elle arrived. At 58, Ben was a Boston archetype personified. Irish heritage proudly displayed, an accent thick enough to spread on toast, and an unyielding loyalty to those he considered friends. His salt and pepper hair was closely cropped, and decades of police work had etched permanent lines around his eyes. "You're courting trouble again, Elle," he greeted her, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "These Summit Heights folks don't play fair." Elle accepted the envelope without opening it. "Tell me something I don't know, Ben." The waitress, Martha, who had worked at Miller's since before either of them were born, brought coffee without being asked. Black for Ben, a splash of cream for Elle. Some routines were sacred. 3 attorneys who filed against them in the last 5 years, Ben continued, his voice low. 1 disbarred on trumped-up ethics violations. 1 suffered a convenient break-in where only case files were stolen. The 3rd had a car accident that left him in physical therapy for 8 months. Elle sipped her coffee, her expression unchanged. And the connection? Nothing that would hold up in court. But in my gut. Ben tapped his stomach. Clear as day. Your gut isn't admissible evidence, detective. No. But it's kept me alive for 35 years on the job. He leaned forward. What's your angle here, Elle? You've got a good practice, a comfortable life. Why agitate the beast? Elle's eyes met his, and for a moment, something fierce flickered within them. Because someone has to. Ben studied her, then nodded slowly. Just watch your back. Word is Richard Thorne himself is taking an interest in these cases. That's unusual for a CEO of his standing. Interesting, Elle murmured, filing away this information. Anything else I should know? Ben hesitated. Thorne has allies in the department, high up. If you need assistance, official channels might not be your best bet. The implication hung between them. Elle simply nodded and finished her coffee. As they parted outside the diner, Ben caught her arm. Elle, I'm serious. These people, they're not just wealthy bullies. There's something more going on with Summit Heights. Elle offered him a reassuring smile. I appreciate the concern, Ben. I truly do. Just promise me you'll be careful. Always am, she replied, already walking away. Always am. What Ben couldn't see was the way her hand tightened around her car keys, knuckles white with tension, or the way her eyes swept the street, cataloging faces, vehicles, potential threats. These were old habits. Habits that had once preserved her life in circumstances far more perilous than a legal dispute with corporate predators. The dark SUV was now parked across from the diner. Richard Thorne's reputation preceded him like an expensive fragrance. At 52, he had transformed Summit Heights from a modest real estate firm into a development empire with projects in 14 states. Business magazines lauded his visionary approach and urban renewal initiatives. What those glossy profiles omitted were the communities shattered, the families displaced, the lives upended in the service of progress and profit. So when Elle's assistant, Chloe, announced that Mr. Thorne was requesting a meeting without an appointment, Elle was prepared but surprised by his audacity. Send him up in 5 minutes, she instructed, using those 5 minutes to activate the discreet recording devices concealed throughout her office and to send a swift text message to an unlisted number. Richard Thorne entered her office as if he owned it, which was precisely his intention with most spaces he occupied. Tall, with silver-streaked dark hair and a tan that suggested recent time on a yacht, he wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Behind him trailed two men in equally expensive but less distinctive attire, lawyers, L presumed, noting their matching leather portfolios. "Ms. Vance." Thorne extended his hand, his smile practiced and camera-ready. "Thank you for accommodating me on such short notice." L stood but didn't immediately take his hand. "It's Attorney Vance, Mr. Thorne, and I haven't accommodated you yet. My time is valuable, and I don't appreciate unscheduled interruptions." If Thorne was offended, he didn't show it. His smile remained fixed as he withdrew his hand. "Direct. I appreciate that. May we sit?" Elle gestured to the chairs opposite her desk. Thorne sat. His associates remained standing. "I'll be equally direct, then," Thorne continued. "These cases you're pursuing against Summit Heights, they're becoming a nuisance. I'd like to propose a solution that benefits everyone involved." "I'm listening," Elle said, her face neutral. Thorne nodded to one of his attorneys, who opened his portfolio and removed a document, placing it on Elle's desk. "A settlement offer for all current cases against Summit Heights. The amount is substantial, more than fair, I think you'll agree." Elle glanced at the figure. It was indeed substantial, enough to provide comfortably for each of her clients for years. She looked back at Thorne, her expression unchanged. "And in exchange? You drop all cases, your clients sign non-disclosure agreements, everyone moves on with their lives, enriched by the experience." His smile widened. "Including you, Attorney Vance. Your fee is built into the settlement." Elle leaned back in her chair. "That's very generous." "I'm a generous man when treated fairly." "And when not treated fairly?" Something shifted in Thorne's eyes. A hardness, a warning. "I prefer not to operate in hypotheticals. Let's focus on the positive outcome available to us right now." Elle stood and walked to her window. The dark SUV was still there. She turned back to Thorne. "You know, Mr. Thorne, in my experience, when someone offers a settlement this generous, this early in proceedings, it usually means one of two things. Either they're genuinely compassionate and wish to spare everyone the pain of protracted litigation." She paused. "Or they're terrified of what might be discovered if the cases proceed." Thorne's smile remained, but it no longer reached his eyes. "A third option exists, Attorney Vance. Perhaps I simply value efficiency. Court cases are time-consuming, expensive, and unpredictable, even with the best legal teams." He gestured to his silent companions. "I've found that most obstacles can be resolved with the right approach." Fascinating choice of words. Obstacles. Figure of speech, Thorne said smoothly. "Nothing more." "Of course." Elle returned to her desk but remained standing. "I'll need to present this offer to my clients. They, not I, will make the decision." "Naturally," Thorne agreed, standing as well. "Though I hope you'll advise them wisely. The legal profession can be challenging. I've seen promising careers derailed by unfortunate circumstances. Bad press, ethical complaints, even accidents. The threat hung in the air between them, all the more menacing for its polite delivery." Elle met his gaze directly. "I always advise my clients according to their best interests, Mr. Thorne, and I'm very careful in all aspects of my life." Something in her tone made Thorne study her more carefully. For the briefest moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. "I'll give you 3 days," he said finally. "After that, the offer expires, and we proceed differently." "I understand completely," Elle replied, her voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. As Thorne and his attorneys left, Elle remained standing, watching the door close behind them. Only when their footsteps faded did she move to her desk and press a button on her phone. "Chloe, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day and call Detective Carter. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately." The parking garage beneath Elle's apartment building was nearly empty at 7:30 p.m. Her footsteps echoed between concrete pillars as she approached her car, a well-maintained 1967 Ford Mustang in classic midnight blue. The vintage vehicle had been her father's pride and joy, and now it was hers. One of the few personal indulgences she allowed herself. She was reaching for her keys when she noticed it. A thin line of fluid beneath the car. Elle froze, then carefully crouched to examine it. Not oil, not transmission fluid. Brake fluid. Slowly, she backed away from the vehicle, scanning the garage with newfound intensity. Nothing seemed out of place, but the prickling sensation at the base of her neck. An old friend from another life told her otherwise. Instead of heading back to the elevator, Elle walked deeper into the garage, toward the emergency stairwell. Once inside the stairwell, she moved with surprising agility, taking the steps 2 at a time until she reached the ground floor. There, she paused, removed her heels, and extracted a small canister from her purse. Pepper spray to all appearances. The side exit led to a narrow alley that ran behind the building. Elle moved swiftly but cautiously, staying close to the wall. At the alley's end, she flagged down a taxi and gave an address 15 blocks from her actual destination. The taxi dropped her at a busy restaurant. Elle entered, walked straight through to the back exit, and emerged into another alley. 3 more calculated movements through public spaces and side streets, and she arrived at a nondescript office building in a commercial district. The sign read Eastern Insurance Solutions, a company that, as far as anyone could determine, provided perfectly legitimate insurance services to a modest client base. Elle entered using a key card and proceeded to the elevator. Inside, she pressed the button for the 3rd floor, then placed her palm against a seemingly ordinary panel beside the buttons. A soft blue light scanned her hand, and the elevator began moving, not up, but down, to a sublevel not indicated on any building plans. The doors opened to reveal a space that contrasted sharply with the mundane office above. Computer screens lined the walls, displaying surveillance feeds, data streams, and complex analytical programs. 3 people occupied the room. A man in his early 30s at a computer station, an older woman reviewing documents, and a broad-shouldered man in his 50s standing before a large digital map of Boston. "Somebody tampered with my car," Elle announced without preamble. "Brake line cut, clean job, professional." The older woman, Beatrice Hayes, 67, with silver dreadlocks pulled back in a severe bun, looked up sharply. "Already? That's escalating faster than we anticipated." "Thorne made his move this afternoon," Elle explained, setting her purse on a table and removing her jacket. "Settlement offer with veiled threats. 3-day deadline." The man at the computer, Leo Maxwell, a former NSA analyst with a genius-level aptitude for digital systems, swiveled in his chair. "That's not Summit Heights' usual playbook. Typically, they start with minor intimidation, property damage, harassing phone calls. The serious stuff comes later." "Exactly," Elle agreed, moving to a locker against the wall. She entered a combination and opened it to reveal workout clothes, which she began to change into without hesitation. "They're skipping steps, which means either they're desperate or they know who you are," completed the 3rd person. Marcus Stone, a retired Marine Force recon. His face weathered by decades of service in the world's most dangerous regions. "The question is, which you do they know about?" Elle pulled a t-shirt over her head. "That's what we need to find out. Leo, I want everything on Thorne's movements for the past month. Who he's meeting, what he's researching. Beatrice, dig deeper on those shell companies we identified. And Marcus." The former Marine raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Security assessment. Complete workup on my apartment, office, and all routes between. Watching me. I want to know how, when, and where." Elle finished changing and began wrapping her hands with fighter tape. "Also, I need a car. Something anonymous. Keys to the Honda are in my desk," Beatrice said. "Mid-2000s Civic beige, invisible to the human eye." Elle nodded her thanks and moved toward a door at the back of the room. Beyond it lay a small but fully equipped training space. Mats, weights, a heavy bag, and various practice weapons mounted on the wall. "You still thinking this is just about real estate?" Marcus asked, following her. Elle took a stance before the heavy bag. "No, this feels different. The Lee documents, Thorne's approach, the car. They're too aggressive, too soon. Well, meaning we've stumbled onto something bigger than property theft. Elle threw a lightning-fast combination at the bag, jab, cross, elbow, with a precision that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. And whatever it is, they're willing to kill to protect it. Marcus watched her technique with an appraising eye. Your form's still good, but it's been, 8 years since you've been in the field? Elle didn't break her rhythm as she delivered a devastating knee strike to the bag. 7 years, 4 months, and I haven't stopped training. Not for a day. Marcus nodded, satisfied. I'll have the security assessment by morning. What's your next move? Elle paused, breathing steadily despite the intensity of her workout. I'm going to make them think they've scared me. Pull back a little. Act nervous. Meanwhile, we accelerate everything on our end. And if they don't buy the act? Elle's eyes hardened as she resumed her assault on the bag. Then they'll learn what happens when you corner a predator. The next morning, Eleanor Vance arrived at her office looking distinctly unsettled. Her usually impeccable appearance showed subtle signs of distress. Her shirt slightly wrinkled, her ponytail not quite as neat, dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. She jumped slightly when her assistant, Chloe, greeted her. A calculated performance for anyone who might be watching. Cancel my lunch appointment, she instructed, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. And call the Rodriguez family. Tell them I need to discuss options. In her office, with the door closed, Elle activated a small device that created a low-level interference field, protection against potential listening devices. Then she made a series of calls to her clients. Her voice now calm and focused as she explained the situation. Yes, Mrs. Lee. They have made an offer, a substantial one. Elle paused, listening. I understand your concerns. No, I would never suggest you dishonor your husband's memory. The decision is entirely yours. Of course, we'll speak again tomorrow. Similar conversations followed with her other clients. None seemed inclined to accept Summit Heights' offer despite the generous terms. Their homes and businesses represented more than financial assets. They were legacies, identities, anchors in a world that increasingly valued neither. By mid-afternoon, Elle had spoken with all but one client. As she prepared to make the final call, her office phone rang. Vance Law Associates, she answered. You should have taken the deal. The voice was male, deliberately distorted. Elle felt a cold knot form in her stomach, but kept her voice steady. Who is this? Consider this a professional courtesy. A final warning. Drop the cases by tomorrow noon, or start shopping for a new car and maybe a new face. The line went dead. Elle sat motionless for several seconds, processing. Then she reached for her secure phone and sent a text. They're accelerating. Implement countermeasures. The response came immediately. Already in motion. Come in tonight. New development. Leo. The Eastern Insurance Solutions basement hummed with activity when Elle arrived that evening. Leo sat surrounded by multiple screens, his fingers flying across keyboards. Beatrice was on the phone, speaking in rapid, hushed tones. Marcus was cleaning a handgun with methodical precision, a ritual that for him was as much meditation as maintenance. What's happened? Elle asked, setting down her bag. Leo spun in his chair. I found something in Summit Heights financials. He gestured to a screen showing complex financial charts. They're moving massive amounts of money through a labyrinth of shell companies. At first, I thought typical tax evasion, but the pattern is wrong. This looks like money laundering. Beatrice finished hanging up her phone. My contact at Treasury confirms they've had suspicions, but couldn't piece together the full network. Elle studied the diagrams. How does this connect to our cases, to the property acquisitions? That's the brilliant part, Leo explained, bringing up a map of Boston with various properties highlighted. Every Summit Heights development follows the same pattern. They target specific neighborhoods, specific buildings. After development, these properties show occupancy rates of 60 to 70%, but their revenue numbers suggest full occupancy at premium rates. Ghost tenants, Elle murmured. They're creating paper tenants to justify cash flowing through the properties. Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. Leo zoomed in on the Rodriguez and Lee properties, along with several others. These locations, they form a perfect distribution network. Strategic positions throughout the city, each within a specific radius of major transportation hubs. Marcus looked up from his weapon. They're not just laundering money. They're moving something physical through these properties. And whatever it is, Beatrice added, it's valuable enough to kill for. Elle paced the room, processing this information. This explains Thorne's personal involvement, the accelerated timeline, the direct threats. We're not just threatening a real estate deal, we're threatening their entire operation. So, what's our play? Marcus asked, reassembling his weapon with practiced ease. Elle stopped pacing. We gather evidence, concrete, irrefutable evidence of the money laundering and whatever else they're involved in. Then we take it to people we trust in the FBI. That's a short list, Beatrice remarked. But it exists, Elle countered. In the meantime, we need to protect our clients. Marcus, I want round-the-clock surveillance on the Rodriguez's home and Lee's restaurant. Leo set up remote monitoring on all their properties, cameras, motion sensors, the works. Already on it, Leo confirmed. But there's one more thing you should see. He brought up a personnel file on the main screen. Richard Thorne did some deeper digging into his background. Harvard Business School, impressive resume, but there's a gap. 2 years in his late 20s where he effectively disappears from all records. Military, Elle suggested. No service record, but I found this. Leo pulled up a heavily redacted document. Mention of a consultant matching Thorne's description who worked with private military contractors in Eastern Europe during the post-Soviet chaos, specializing in asset acquisition and transportation. Smuggler, Marcus translated. High-end with military-grade training. This isn't just some rich guy playing tough, Leo added. Thorne has a background in this world. Elle absorbed this information, her expression hardening. So we're dealing with professionals. Good to know. She turned to Marcus. I'll need to step up my training. Every morning, 5 a.m., before the office. Like old times. Marcus nodded. And I need to move up my timeline, Elle continued. The documents Mrs. Lee brought me, they contained references to city inspections that never happened. Permits issued without proper review. I think someone in the city government is on Summit Heights payroll. I can run background checks on all city officials involved in these approvals, Beatrice offered. Do it, Elle instructed. And Leo, I need you to. A sharp beeping interrupted her. Leo turned quickly to one of his monitors. Motion sensors at your apartment, he announced. 2 individuals just entered through the service entrance. Elle moved swiftly to stand behind him, watching the grainy security feed. 2 men in dark clothing, moving with practiced efficiency, were picking the lock to her apartment door. They're not even trying to hide it, Marcus observed. They want you to know they can get to you. Should I trigger the alarm system? Leo asked, fingers hovering over his keyboard. Elle considered for a moment. No, let them in. Let's see what they're after. The team watched in tense silence as the intruders entered Elle's apartment. They moved methodically through the space, clearly searching for something. One placed small objects in various locations, listening devices, Elle presumed. The other went straight to her home office and began attempting to access her computer. Amateur hour, Leo scoffed. That system's triple encrypted. They're not after data, Elle realized. They're setting a stage. As if confirming her assessment, one of the intruders removed a small vial from his pocket and began sprinkling a white powder on her desk. Drugs, Marcus growled. They're planting evidence. Classic play, Beatrice agreed. Discredit the attorney, discredit the cases. Elle watched the scene unfold, her face betraying no emotion. But those who knew her well would recognize the dangerous stillness that had come over her, the calm before a storm. Leo, she said quietly, I want everything on these 2. Faces, fingerprints if they touch anything unloved, vehicles they arrived in. Full workup on it. On it? Leo confirmed, fingers already flying across his keyboard. What's your move? Marcus asked. Elle's eyes never left the screen. They've made their play. Now I make mine. Which is? A cold smile touched Elle's lips, an expression that belonged to a different woman than the polished attorney who argued motions in court. This was the smile of someone who had navigated worlds far darker than corporate litigation, who had faced threats far deadlier than legal intimidation. I'm going to give them exactly what they expect, she said softly, a frightened lawyer in over her head. And then, Beatrice prompted. Elle's smile vanished, replaced by a look of absolute determination. And then, I'm going to destroy everything they've built. As if sensing her resolve, one of the intruders on the screen looked directly at the hidden camera. A lucky glance, not discovery. For a moment, it seemed as though he was staring directly at Elle. Through the digital divide, a silent challenge issued. Elle didn't flinch. This wasn't her first dance with danger, nor would it be her last. Behind her calm exterior, something was awakening. Skills and instincts deliberately suppressed for years in favor of a quieter life. The training that had once made her one of the most effective operatives in federal service hadn't faded. It had merely been dormant. They think they're hunting me, Elle said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're about to learn they've been stalking a wolf. Outside, the night deepened over Boston, shadows lengthening across a city unaware of the battle brewing in its midst. A battle that would begin with a ponytail being yanked by someone who had no idea what such an act would unleash. Dawn broke over Boston with reluctant gray light filtering through a blanket of autumn clouds. Eleanor Vance stood at the window of her temporary safe house, a modest apartment registered under one of Beatrice's many aliases, watching the city come alive beneath her. 7 stories up, she could see the morning commuters beginning their daily pilgrimage, unaware of the shadow war unfolding in their midst. Elle had slept precisely 4 hours, a discipline honed during her previous career. Now dressed in tactical athletic wear, she moved through a series of stretches that gradually increased in intensity. Her muscles, still warm from her morning run, responded with the memory of thousands of similar mornings. The apartment door opened with a soft click. Marcus Stone entered, carrying 2 cups of black coffee and a manila envelope. Like Elle, he was already fully alert despite the early hour, old habits that neither had been able to break in civilian life. "Perimeter's clear," he reported, handing her one of the coffees. Leo's monitoring system picked up no unusual activity overnight. Elle accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. "In my apartment, our friends left around 3 a.m. According to Leo's analysis, they planted 6 listening devices, 2 cameras, and left trace amounts of cocaine in your home office, bedroom, and bathroom." "Predictable," Elle murmured, taking a sip of the scalding coffee. "Any idea on our visitors?" Marcus opened the envelope and spread several photographs on the kitchen counter. Facial recognition got a partial match on one of them. David Miller, former Army Ranger, dishonorable discharge in 2018 for excessive force during an operation in Syria. Since then, he's worked private security for several high-profile clients with questionable ethics. And the other? Nothing solid yet, but his movement patterns suggest similar training, military or law enforcement background. Elle studied the photographs. The men moved with a distinctive efficiency she recognized from her own training. Economy of motion, situational awareness, professional focus. These weren't common thugs. They were operators, which meant Thorne wasn't just employing muscle. He was assembling a team. "They're escalating faster than we anticipated," she observed. "The drug plant suggests they're planning to move against me within days, not weeks." "You still want to play the frightened attorney?" Marcus asked, skepticism evident in his tone. Elle's eyes remained on the photographs. "Yes, but with a modification. I need to be at my office today. It's time to let them think their intimidation is working." She looked up at Marcus. "I'll need a convincing performance." By 9 a.m., Eleanor Vance arrived at her office building looking distinctly rattled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her typically immaculate suit showed wrinkles, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She clutched her briefcase with white-knuckled intensity as she hurried into the building, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The dark SUV was parked across the street again. Through its tinted windows, someone was watching. In her office, Elle made a show of double-checking the locks before closing the blinds. When her assistant, Chloe, arrived, Elle jumped visibly at the sound of the door. "Ms. Vance." Chloe's concern was genuine. In 3 years of employment, she'd never seen her boss anything less than perfectly composed. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," Elle said quickly. Too quickly. "Just not sleeping well." "Listen, Chloe, I need you to reschedule all client meetings for the rest of the week. Say I've come down with something." "Of course," Chloe agreed, studying her employer with worried eyes. "Should I cancel your meeting with Mr. Rodriguez this afternoon as well?" Elle hesitated as if weighing options. "No," she decided. "Keep that one, but it will be the last appointment of the day. Understand? And after he leaves, you go home immediately. Don't stay late. Not for any reason." Chloe's concern deepened. "Ms. Vance, if you're in some kind of trouble." "I'm handling it." Elle cut her off, then softened her tone. "Really, Chloe, everything's under control. Just unusual circumstances with a case." The younger woman didn't look convinced but nodded. "I'll reschedule everything except Mr. Rodriguez." After Chloe left, Elle activated the anti-surveillance device in her office and made a series of calls, first to Detective Carter, then to several of her clients. To each, she conveyed the same message. Things were becoming complicated, and she advised caution. At precisely 2 p.m., Mateo Rodriguez arrived for his appointment. At 73, he carried himself with the straight-backed dignity of a man who had rebuilt his life from nothing after fleeing political persecution in Chile decades earlier. The small grocery store he and his wife had established had grown into a neighborhood institution, supporting their family for over 30 years. "Attorney Vance," he greeted her, his accent still strong despite his years in America. "You look troubled." Elle managed a tight smile. "Difficult case, Mr. Rodriguez. Please sit down." Once seated, she wasted no time. "Summit Heights has made an offer, a substantial one." She slid a document across the desk. "More than fair market value for your property." Rodriguez glanced at the figure, then back at Elle, his weathered face impassive. "You think I should take it?" "It wasn't a question. I think you should consider all options carefully," Elle replied, choosing her words with precision. "This situation is becoming complicated." "Complicated," Rodriguez repeated, studying her. "You mean dangerous?" When Elle didn't immediately respond, he continued. "I've seen danger before, Attorney Vance. In Chile, under Pinochet, men would come to your business, make offers you couldn't refuse. Not because the money was good, but because refusal meant consequences. This is different, Mr. Rodriguez." "Is it?" His eyes, sharp despite his age, held hers. "You have the same look my friends had back then. The look that says you're being threatened, but are too proud to admit it." Elle broke eye contact first. "The offer expires tomorrow at noon," she said quietly. "I need your decision by 10 a.m. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment. "My father built a business in Santiago. When they came for it, he took their money and thought himself lucky. He died a year later, a broken man with nothing but cash that couldn't buy back his dignity." He stood slowly. "I won't make his mistake, Attorney Vance. Some things aren't for sale." After he left, Elle remained at her desk, motionless. The performance she'd given, the uncertain attorney, the subtle pressure to take the deal, had felt too real for comfort. 7 years ago, she would never have questioned her resolve. But 7 years was a long time to live in the peaceful world of civil litigation, away from the high-stakes operations that had once defined her existence. Her secure phone vibrated with a text from Leo. "New development. Office compromised. Cameras installed in ventilation last night. They're watching." Elle didn't react outwardly. Instead, she continued her performance, shoulders slumping as she rubbed her temples. For the benefit of whoever was watching, she opened her desk drawer and removed a bottle of aspirin, dry swallowed 2 tablets, then began packing her briefcase with defeated movements. The law offices of Vance Legal Associates typically closed at 6 p.m., but it was common for the lights in Elle's third-floor office to burn late into the evening. Tonight, however, she made a show of leaving precisely at 5:30. Her movements hurried, her posture suggesting a woman eager to retreat to safety. The dark SUV pulled away from its parking spot as she exited the building, maintaining a discreet distance as it followed her Mustang. Elle pretended not to notice, but mentally mapped the tail's movements through her rearview mirror. Professional work. They knew how to follow without being obvious. Most people would never have spotted them. Instead of heading to her apartment, which she knew was now compromised, Elle drove to a mid-range hotel in the financial district. She checked in under her own name, making no attempt to hide her identity. In the hotel room, she performed a perfunctory sweep for surveillance devices, then made a call on her regular phone. "Detective Carter," she said when he answered, her voice deliberately pitched loud enough to carry. "I'm staying at the Westbridge Hotel tonight, room 712. Yes, I think someone's been in my apartment. No, I don't want to file a report yet. I'm not sure what to do." After hanging up, Elle ordered room service, took a long shower, and made a visible show of settling in for the night. At 11 p.m., she turned off the lights and got into bed, pulling the covers up as if preparing to sleep. She waited exactly 17 minutes before moving. With practiced silence, Elle slipped from the bed, already dressed in dark athletic wear beneath the covers. From her suitcase, she removed items that would never be found in an ordinary lawyer's overnight bag. A small tactical flashlight, a lock-picking set disguised as a manicure kit, a phone different from both her regular and secure devices, and a slim case containing what appeared to be reading glasses. The glasses, when she put them on, revealed themselves to be much more. A subtle tap on the right temple activated a heads-up display that linked to her phone, providing real-time mapping and communication capabilities, military-grade technology that was definitely not available to civilians. Elle exited her room not through the door, which might be watched, but via the balcony. The Westbridge Hotel's architecture featured a series of decorative ledges that, to someone with her training, provided a serviceable route to the fire escape on the building's north face. The maneuver would have been daunting for most people. Elle completed it with fluid confidence. 17 minutes later, she arrived at a service entrance to her office building. The night security guard, a retired police officer named George, who had known Elle for years, buzzed her in without question. "Working late again, Ms. Vance?" he asked, not looking up from his crossword puzzle. "Just forgot some files, George," she replied with a warm smile that contained no hint of her true purpose. "Don't mind me." "Never do," George assured her, returning to his puzzle. Elle took the service elevator to the second floor, then the stairs to the third. Instead of entering her office directly, she moved to a utility closet at the end of the hallway. Inside, behind shelves of cleaning supplies, a small access panel led to the building's maintenance crawl space. The ventilation system in the century-old building had been modernized over decades, creating a labyrinth of old and new ductwork that few people understood completely. Elle, however, had memorized its layout within weeks of leasing the office. Now she navigated the narrow passages with practiced ease, making her way toward her office without triggering any of the sensors Leo had detected. From a ceiling vent, she had a perfect view of her office below. Using a fiber optic camera no thicker than a strand of hair, she located the surveillance devices that had been planted. 2 cameras disguised as air quality sensors, 3 audio bugs concealed in light fixtures, and a signal booster hidden behind a painting. Professional work, expensive equipment. Whoever Thorne had hired, they weren't cutting corners. Elle didn't remove the devices. Instead, she carefully installed countermeasures designed by Leo, microscopic jammers that would activate on her command, feeding the enemy surveillance a loop of pre-recorded footage while blocking audio transmission. Task completed, she reversed her path through the ventilation system, returning to the utility closet, and then making her way back to the service entrance. George was dozing when she passed, his crossword abandoned. Elle let herself out silently. Instead of returning directly to the hotel, she took a circuitous route to the Eastern Insurance Solutions building. The underground facility was dimly lit when she arrived, with only Leo still awake, monitoring multiple screens with the intensity of a chess master studying the board. "They took the bait?" he asked without looking up. "Hook, line, and sinker," Elle confirmed, setting down her equipment. "The office is bugged exactly where you predicted. High-end stuff. Military grade." "Military grade," Leo agreed, bringing up schematics on his main screen. "These particular models are officially restricted to government agencies, but there's a black market for them in certain circles. Expensive, though. Whoever's backing Thorn has deep pockets." Speaking of backing, Elle moved to stand beside him, studying the displays. "What have you found on those financial trails?" Leo's fingers danced across his keyboard, bringing up a complex network of transactions. "It's fascinating, really. Summit Heights operates like a legitimate business on the surface, and parts of it genuinely are. But beneath that, there's a sophisticated laundering operation moving money through at least 17 shell companies across 12 countries. Source of the funds? That's where it gets interesting." Leo highlighted several nodes in the network. "These entry points align with known trafficking routes, both drugs and human. But the volume suggests they're moving something else as well. Something high value but lower volume. Weapons?" Elle suggested. "Possibly. Or industrial secrets, pharmaceutical compounds, specialized technology." Leo shrugged. "Without more data, I can't narrow it down." Elle studied the map thoughtfully. "And the properties they're targeting?" "Perfect distribution network," Leo confirmed. "Each one sits at a strategic point for moving goods unseen through the city. The Rodriguez grocery has a basement that connects to old service tunnels from the 1920s. The Lee restaurant backs up against a disused rail spur. These aren't random targets. So, Summit Heights isn't just laundering money through real estate," Elle concluded. "They're creating an infrastructure for moving whatever they're trafficking." "Exactly. And based on the urgency of their response to your cases, I'd say we've stumbled onto something much bigger than we initially thought." Elle paced the room, processing this information. "We need hard evidence. Documents, recordings, physical proof of the operation." "I'm good, but I can't hack their secure servers remotely," Leo admitted. "They're using air-gapped systems for the sensitive stuff." "Then we go in," Elle decided. "Physical infiltration." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Summit Heights headquarters has state-of-the-art security. Even for someone with your background, that's a significant risk." "Who said anything about their headquarters?" Elle's expression shifted, a cold smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Thorn thinks he's watching me. Let's see how well he watches himself." Richard Thorn's personal residence was a modernist mansion overlooking Boston Harbor. All glass and steel and calculated ostentation. Set back from the road behind manicured grounds and a discreet but effective security perimeter, it projected exactly the image its owner intended. Success, power, untouchability. At 2:17 a.m., a catering van approached the service entrance. The driver, a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, presented credentials to the security guard. "Late delivery for tomorrow's breakfast meeting," she explained in a Boston accent thick enough to cut with a knife. Mr. Thorne's assistant said it had to be in the refrigerator tonight or heads would roll. The guard checked his tablet. "I don't have any delivery scheduled." The woman, Beatrice Hayes, unrecognizable in her disguise, rolled her eyes dramatically. "Yeah, well, welcome to my world, honey. You think Natalie ever bothers to update the security log? 3 years I've been doing these deliveries, and not once has she remembered to put it in the system." She thrust a digital tablet toward him. "Here's the order form with her signature. You want to call her at 2 a.m. to confirm? Be my guest. But just so you know, last guy who woke her up for something like this got reassigned to the warehouse in Southie." The guard hesitated, then waved her through without calling. "Park by the kitchen entrance. Don't wander." "Wouldn't dream of it, sweetheart," Beatrice assured him, driving forward. Once parked, she waited exactly 7 minutes, enough time for the guard's attention to drift elsewhere, before opening the van's rear doors. Elle emerged, dressed in the black uniform of the catering company, her hair hidden beneath a cap, her face altered with subtle but effective makeup techniques that changed the apparent structure of her cheekbones and jawline. "You've got 20 minutes," Beatrice murmured, handing her a catering box. "The real delivery arrives at 2:45. Elle nodded and moved toward the kitchen entrance. The door required a key card, but Leo's forged credential worked flawlessly. Inside, she navigated the darkened house with confident steps, having memorized its layout from architectural plans Leo had obtained. Thorne's home office was located on the second floor overlooking the harbor. The space was as ostentatious as the man himself. Leather-bound books he'd likely never read, awards and photographs documenting his ascent to wealth and influence. A desk the size of a small boat, crafted from a single slab of imported mahogany. Elle went straight to the computer. As expected, it required biometric authentication, fingerprint and facial recognition. She made no attempt to bypass these measures. Instead, she removed a device from her pocket that resembled a smartphone, but was considerably more sophisticated. Placing it near the computer, she activated it with a touch. The device, another of Leo's creations, began scanning for wireless signals, seeking the hidden networks that even the most security-conscious executives often overlook. Smart home systems, wireless printers, digital picture frames. Any connected device could provide a backdoor if you knew how to exploit it. Within minutes, the device had mapped Thorne's home network and identified a vulnerability: a smart lighting system with outdated firmware. Through this opening, Leo's program began extracting data from connected devices, quietly copying files to a secure server. While the digital infiltration progressed, Elle conducted a physical search of the office. She photographed documents from Thorne's desk, examined his calendar, and methodically worked through the room's hiding places. A concealed wall safe, which yielded to her lock-picking skills after 47 seconds, contained what appeared to be ledgers coded in a simple substitution cipher, along with a USB drive. Elle photographed several pages of the ledger, then copied the contents of the USB drive before returning everything exactly as she had found it. As she finished, her earpiece vibrated with Beatrice's voice. 5-minute warning. Wrap it up. With practiced efficiency, Elle completed her search, leaving no trace of her presence. She exited the office and made her way back to the kitchen where she helped Beatrice unload several legitimate catering boxes to maintain their cover. By 2:42 a.m., they were driving away from Thorne's estate, the security guard none the wiser. "Get what you needed?" Beatrice asked once they were safely beyond the property. Elle reviewed the images on her device. "More than enough to start connecting the dots. Leo will need to decrypt some of these files, but from what I can tell, we've just gotten our first concrete evidence of Summit Heights' operation. And if Thorne realizes he's been compromised?" "He won't," Elle said with quiet confidence. "Men like him believe their fortresses are impenetrable, and tomorrow he'll be too focused on watching me fall apart to notice anything amiss in his own house." The next morning, Eleanor Vance arrived at her office looking worse than ever. Her hands trembled visibly as she fumbled with her keys. Inside, she moved frantically, gathering files into her briefcase while making a series of increasingly agitated phone calls. "Yes, Mr. Rodriguez, I understand your position, but circumstances have changed," she said, her voice carrying clearly to the hidden microphones. "I strongly advise you to reconsider the offer. No, I can't explain over the phone. Just trust me on this." Similar conversations followed with her other clients, each more desperate than the last. To anyone monitoring, it was the sound of an attorney crumbling under pressure, scrambling to salvage what she could. At 11:30 a.m., 30 minutes before Thorne's deadline, Elle placed a call to Summit Heights' main office. "This is Eleanor Vance," she said, her voice strained. "I need to speak with Mr. Thorne immediately." "Yes, it's regarding the settlement offer. My clients are reconsidering." 20 minutes later, Richard Thorne himself called back. "Attorney Vance." His smooth voice oozed false concern. "I understand there's been a development with our proposal. My clients are willing to accept the terms," Elle said, sounding defeated. "With one condition. They want an additional 48 hours to make arrangements before vacating their properties." How accommodating of them, Thorne replied, making no effort to hide his satisfaction. I believe that can be arranged. Why don't we meet this afternoon to finalize the details? Say 4 o'clock at your office. That would be acceptable. Excellent. I look forward to resolving this matter amicably. The smug triumph in his voice was unmistakable. After hanging up, Elle sat at her desk, shoulders slumped in apparent surrender. For the benefit of the surveillance cameras, she buried her face in her hands for several moments before slowly straightening up and beginning to organize her files. What the cameras couldn't see was the cold calculation behind her eyes, the mental preparations being made not for surrender, but for the trap she was about to spring. At precisely 3:50 p.m., Elle activated the countermeasures Leo had installed, freezing the surveillance in her office into a loop that showed her anxiously preparing for Thorne's arrival. With the cameras neutralized, she quickly moved through her final preparations, checking the recording devices concealed throughout the office and confirming that her team was in position. Marcus's voice came through her earpiece. Security team in the lobby. For men, professionally equipped. 1 staying with the vehicle, 3 accompanying Thorne upstairs. Acknowledged, Elle responded quietly. Beatrice in position across the street, Beatrice confirmed. Leo's tapped into the building's security cameras. We have eyes on every approach. Good, Elle said, adjusting her clothing. A deliberately conservative suit that concealed the athletic wear beneath. Remember, no intervention unless absolutely necessary. We need Thorne's confession clean and admissible. At 4 o'clock sharp, her office door opened. Richard Thorne entered, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits that didn't quite conceal the muscle beneath, with a third man positioning himself outside the door. Thorne's smile was that of a predator, savoring the moment before the kill. Attorney Vance, he greeted her, extending his hand. I appreciate your pragmatism in this matter. Elle shook his hand briefly, her grip deliberately weak. Let's just get this over with, Mr. Thorne. Of course, he gestured to his associates. I hope you don't mind that I brought my legal team, given the complexity of the agreements. Elle glanced at the men, recognizing one as David Miller from the surveillance photos. These weren't lawyers. They were enforcers. But she merely nodded and indicated the chairs opposite her desk. I've prepared the paperwork as discussed, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. All that's required are the signatures. Thorne made a show of reviewing the documents, though his eyes barely skimmed the text. Everything appears to be in order. I must say, I'm pleased we could resolve this without further unpleasantness. Yes, Elle agreed, her voice flat, though I do have one question before we proceed. Oh, Thorne raised an eyebrow, indulging her. The cocaine your men planted in my apartment. Was that supposed to be found before or after I mysteriously changed my legal position? Elle's voice remained soft, but something had shifted in her demeanor. The trembling was gone. Her posture had straightened. Her eyes, when they met Thorne's, were no longer fearful, but coldly analytical. Thorne's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. I have no idea what you're talking about, Attorney Vance. Perhaps the stress of these proceedings. And the brake lines on my car, Elle continued as if he hadn't spoken. That was a professional job. Military training, if I had to guess. Someone like David Miller here. She nodded toward the man standing behind Thorne. Former Army Ranger, wasn't it, Mr. Miller? For the dishonorable discharge. A flicker of alarm crossed Thorne's face, his guard's tensed hands drifting toward concealed weapons. You've been misinformed, Thorne said carefully. And I'm beginning to think you're not approaching these negotiations in good faith. Oh, I'm approaching them exactly as they deserve, Elle replied, rising slowly from her chair. You see, Mr. Thorne, I've known who and what you are from the beginning. The real estate developments, the money laundering, the trafficking operation, all of it. Thorne's facade of civility vanished. You have no idea what you're talking about, and whatever you think you know, you'll never prove it. That's where you're wrong. Elle's voice remained calm, almost conversational. I have the cipher key from your home safe. I have copies of the ledgers. I have the contents of your private server, including communications with your partners in Eastern Europe. The color drained from Thorne's face. You're bluffing. The blue bedroom on the second floor of your house has a rather distinctive view of the harbor, Elle continued, and you really should update the firmware on your smart home system. It's embarrassingly easy to breach. Thorne stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. We're done here. No, Elle corrected him, still unervingly calm. We're just getting started. Miller moved forward, reaching inside his jacket. Boss, we should leave now. I don't think so, Elle said, pressing a button on her desk phone. You see, this entire conversation is being recorded and transmitted directly to several very interested parties, including former colleagues of mine at the FBI. Former colleagues? Thorne's eyes narrowed, reassessing her. You should have done better research, Mr. Thorne, before you decided to threaten an ex-federal agent specializing in organized crime and trafficking operations. For the first time, genuine uncertainty flickered across Thorne's face. He gestured sharply to his men. Deal with this now. Miller moved with professional speed, drawing a pistol from his shoulder holster. But Elle was already in motion, her movements fluid and practiced. Before the weapon could be brought to bear, she had closed the distance between them, one hand deflecting his arm upward while the other delivered a precise strike to his throat. The second guard lunged for her, reaching for her ponytail in an attempt to control her. A basic combat technique, but a mistake against a trained opponent. Elle rotated into his grasp rather than pulling away, using his own momentum to bring her elbow into devastating contact with his solar plexus. As he doubled over, struggling for breath, Elle completed her rotation and delivered a textbook Krav Maga combination. A knee strike followed by an open palm heel thrust that sent him crashing into Thorne's third guard, who had just burst through the door at the sound of the commotion. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. Miller recovered first, abandoning his dropped weapon in favor of a direct physical assault. He was good, his military training evident in his balanced stance and measured approach. But Elle was better. She met his attack with a defensive posture that seemed to absorb his strength, redirecting rather than opposing it directly. When he overextended on a strike, she moved inside his guard with surgical precision, targeting nerve clusters and weak points. With the accumulated knowledge of decades of specialized training, Miller went down hard, his face registering shock before unconsciousness claimed him. The third guard, disentangling himself from his fallen colleague, reached for a concealed weapon. Elle was across the room in 2 strides, her movement so swift it seemed almost choreographed. A spinning kick knocked the weapon from his hand, and a follow-up combination of strikes left him slumped against the wall. Thorne, witnessing the systematic dismantling of his security team, backed toward the door. For a man accustomed to wielding power, the sudden reversal left him visibly shaken. You have no idea who you're dealing with, he threatened, his composure cracking. The people I work with will abandon you the moment they realize you've become a liability. Elle finished for him, advancing slowly. That's how it works in your world, isn't it, Richard? Everyone's an asset until they're not. Thorne reached behind him for the door handle, but it didn't budge. What do you want? He demanded, desperation edging into his voice. Justice, Elle replied simply. For the Rodriguez family, for Mrs. Lee, for all the others whose lives you've treated as collateral damage in your operation. Outside the office, the sound of multiple footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal Detective Carter, accompanied by several uniformed officers and 2 individuals in suits, who carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. Richard Thorne, one of the agents announced, you're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and suspicion of involvement in international trafficking operations. He nodded respectfully to Elle. Agent Vance? Or should I say Attorney Vance now? Eleanor is fine, Davis, she replied with a slight smile. It's been a while. As the officers moved to secure Thorne and his unconscious guards, Detective Carter surveyed the scene with a low whistle. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Elle. Elle smoothed her suit jacket, tucking a few loose strands of hair back into her ponytail with the casual air of someone adjusting after a minor inconvenience. not a hand-to-hand combat situation. They yanked my ponytail, Ben, she said, a hint of grim humor in her voice. Oldest mistake in the book. Thorn, being led away in handcuffs, turned back to look at her with a mixture of rage and disbelief. This isn't over, he snarled. You have no idea how far this goes. Who's involved? Elle met his gaze steadily. Then I guess I'll just have to keep digging. As Thorn was escorted from the office, Agent Samuel Davis approached Elle. We need to talk about your methods here, he said quietly. Some of this evidence might be problematic from a procedural standpoint. That's why I made sure to get his confession on record, Elle replied. Everything else is just supporting material to point you in the right direction. The real evidence is in his financial records, which you now have legal cause to access. Davis nodded appreciatively. Still the strategic thinker, I see. The Bureau has missed that brain of yours. I haven't gone anywhere, Elle said, looking around at her office, her chosen battlefield. Just found a different way to fight the same war. As the federal agents began processing the scene, Elle stepped to the window. Across the street, Beatrice gave a subtle thumbs up from her observation post. Through her earpiece, Leo's voice reported that all surveillance footage had been secured and their communication channels remained uncompromised. The first phase of their operation had succeeded. But as Elle watched Thorn being placed in a federal vehicle, she knew his words weren't empty threats. This was indeed just the beginning. Whatever Summit Heights was involved in, whoever was backing their operation, they wouldn't surrender easily. They would regroup, reassess, and respond, likely with even greater force. And Eleanor Vance, former federal agent turned attorney, would be ready when they did. Because some battles weren't fought with badges and warrants. Some required a different approach, a precise combination of legal strategy and operational expertise that few possessed. Elle adjusted her ponytail one final time, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The real work was just beginning. 3 days after Richard Thorn's arrest, the first autumn snow fell on Boston, delicate flakes dissolving on contact with the city streets. Eleanor Vance watched the snowfall from the window of a secure conference room at the federal building downtown, her reflection ghost-like against the darkening afternoon sky. Behind her, the room hummed with activity. Federal agents reviewing documents, analysts compiling data, prosecutors building their case against Summit Heights developments. Agent Samuel Davis, 27 years with the Bureau, the last 12 heading organized crime in the Boston office, approached with 2 cups of coffee. At 59, Davis retained the physical discipline of a much younger man, though Silver had long since claimed his close-cropped hair. He had been Elle's supervisor during her federal service, and the respect between them remained mutual and genuine. Just like old times, he observed, handing her one of the cups. Except back then, you were the one bringing me coffee. Elle accepted the cup with a small smile. Careful, Davis. That almost sounds like nostalgia. Maybe it is. He leaned against the window frame. You were one of the best analysts I ever worked with, Vance. The way you could see patterns, connections, things the rest of us missed. I didn't miss anything here, Elle noted, turning to survey the room. The question is, why did it take a private citizen with limited resources to uncover an operation this extensive? Davis's expression tightened. That's being investigated internally. There are concerns about potential interference at higher levels. Meaning someone with influence has been protecting Summit Heights. Elle translated. Possibly, which is why we're keeping this operation compartmentalized. He lowered his voice. Your evidence is solid, the financial trails, the property acquisitions, the communication records. But Thorn's lawyers are already crying foul about chain of custody and improper collection methods. Let them, Elle replied calmly. You have enough to secure warrants for Summit Heights official records. What you find there will be admissible without question. And in the meantime, Davis continued, we have a decision to make about you. Elle raised an eyebrow. Me? Your involvement creates complications. Technically, you conducted an unauthorized investigation, possibly including illegal surveillance and breaking and entering. Technically, Elle agreed, unperturbed. As a former federal agent, you know better than most how this works. If you remain involved officially, defense attorneys will use you to taint the entire case. Elle nodded slowly, seeing the direction of the conversation. So, I need to disappear from the official narrative. It would be best, Davis confirmed, for the integrity of the prosecution. And unofficially? Davis glanced around the room before meeting her eyes directly. Unofficially, this case has disturbing implications. Summit Heights network is more extensive than we initially thought. The financial trails lead to shell companies connected to Eastern European interests that have been on our radar for years. Suspected arms dealers, human traffickers, industrial espionage. Not just real estate and money laundering, Elle murmured. I knew it. Your instincts were right, Davis acknowledged. This is bigger than Thorn. Much bigger. And given the possibility of high-level interference, he let the implication hang between them. Elle understood perfectly. The Bureau needed her to continue her investigation off the books, to pursue angles they couldn't officially touch, to develop information they could later discover through legitimate channels. What about my clients? She asked. The Rodriguez family, Mrs. Lee, the others targeted by Summit Heights? They'll be protected, Davis assured her. The Bureau has placed a freeze on all Summit Heights development projects pending investigation. Your clients' properties are safe for now. Elle considered this arrangement, weighing its implications. I'll need resources, she said finally. Access to certain databases, protection for my team. Already arranged, Davis replied. Your security clearance has been provisionally reinstated as a special consultant. Limited access, but enough to give you what you need. He handed her a nondescript keycard. This will get you into our satellite facility in Cambridge. Old NSA listening post, officially decommissioned in 2015. Unofficially, still operational for special projects. Elle pocketed the card without comment. The arrangement was unorthodox, technically borderline legal, but necessary given the circumstances. They both knew it. One more thing, Davis added, his expression grave. Thorn made a call before we confiscated his phone. 16 seconds to an unlisted number. We haven't been able to trace it, but given the timing, he warned someone, Elle concluded, which means whoever's behind Summit Heights knows their operation is compromised. And they know about you. We can provide protection. No, Elle cut him off firmly. Official protection would only confirm my continued involvement. Besides, I have my own security measures in place. Davis studied her with the appraising eye of someone who had seen agents come and go throughout a long career. 7 years is a long time to be away from field operations, Vance. Reflexes dull. Instincts fade. Elle met his gaze evenly. Not mine. After a moment, Davis nodded, accepting her assessment. Be careful out there. These people play for keeps. So do I, Elle replied, turning back to the window, where the snow continued to fall, each flake unique, fragile and fleeting, much like the moments of safety before the storm that was surely coming. The Cambridge facility lived up to Davis's description. Nondescript from the outside, a technological marvel within. Housed in what appeared to be an abandoned telecommunications hub, the building's unremarkable exterior concealed 3 subterranean levels of advanced surveillance and analytical equipment. Leo Maxwell moved through the space like a child in a candy store, his expertise finding kinship with the sophisticated systems. This is at least 2 generations beyond anything commercially available, he observed, examining a particularly complex array of servers. Some of this equipment I've only read about in theoretical papers. Enjoy it while you can, Elle advised, setting up her workstation. Our access is temporary and conditional. Beatrice Hayes, reviewing financial documents at a nearby terminal, glanced up. How conditional? Plausible deniability conditional, Elle replied. We're here to develop leads that the Bureau can then discover through official channels. So, we're ghosting the investigation, Marcus Stone summarized from his position by the door, where he'd been assessing the facility's security measures. Doing the work without getting the credit or the subpoenas. This arrangement gives us freedom to operate without bureaucratic constraints, Elle pointed out. Marcus nodded, understanding the value of such freedom. What's our first target? Elle activated the main display screen, bringing up a complex network diagram, the fruit of Leo's analysis of the data they'd gathered from Thorne's residence and Summit Heights systems. Summit Heights is clearly just one node in a much larger operation, she explained, highlighting various connections. Their real estate developments provide both money laundering and physical infrastructure for moving goods, but they're taking direction from somewhere else. She zoomed in on a particular cluster of connections. These financial transfers link to companies based in Estonia, Bulgaria, and Cyprus, all known fronts for this man. The display shifted to show a photograph of a severe-looking man in his 60s. Viktor Volkov, former KGB, now a billionaire with interests in shipping, technology, and defense contracting. I know that name, Beatrice said, frowning. Wasn't he investigated for arms dealing in the early 2000s? Investigated but never charged, Elle confirmed. He's politically connected and extremely careful. According to my old files, the Bureau has suspected him of involvement in everything from weapons smuggling to industrial espionage, but could never build a solid case. And now he's operating in Boston, Marcus observed, through Summit Heights. Not just Boston, Leo corrected, manipulating the display to show a map of the United States with multiple points highlighted. I've identified similar real estate development patterns in 7 other major cities, all using different company names, but all following the same operational template as Summit Heights. A national network, Elle murmured. But for what purpose? That's the million-dollar question, Beatrice said. What are they moving through these properties that's valuable enough to build this entire infrastructure? Elle studied the map thoughtfully. Whatever it is, the next shipment is likely already in motion. With Thorne arrested, they'll be adapting their operation, either abandoning their Boston assets or accelerating their use before they're compromised further. So we need to catch them in the act, Marcus concluded. Exactly. Elle turned to Leo. I need surveillance on all Summit Heights properties, especially the ones adjacent to our clients' buildings. Movement patterns, unusual deliveries, new personnel, anything that doesn't fit established routines. Already on it, Leo confirmed. I've tapped into traffic cameras, commercial satellite feeds, and building security systems in the target areas. If anything moves, we'll know about it. Beatrice, dig deeper on Volkov's known associates in the U.S. Focus on anyone with connections to Boston or Summit Heights executives. What about me? Marcus asked. Elle met his eyes directly. I need you to prepare for direct intervention. If we identify an active operation, we may need to move quickly with minimal official support. Marcus nodded, understanding the implications. I'll assemble equipment and plan extraction routes. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Elle remained at the central display, studying Volkov's photograph. During her years with the Bureau, she had tracked numerous criminal organizations, each with its own methods and motivations. But there was something about this operation that felt different. More sophisticated, more disciplined, more patient. Less like traditional organized crime and more like... The realization hit her with sudden clarity. It's an intelligence operation, she said aloud. Beatrice looked up from her work. What? The pattern, Elle explained, moving back to the main display. It's not typical of criminal enterprises. The careful compartmentalization, the long-term property acquisitions, the strategic positioning near transportation hubs and government facilities. She began highlighting specific Summit Heights properties on the map. Look at the placement. This building overlooks the federal courthouse. This one shares a city block with a defense contractor. This restaurant sits directly across from the DARPA research facility. Surveillance positions, Marcus recognized immediately, his military training allowing him to see the pattern. Exactly, Elle confirmed. They're not just moving goods. They're gathering intelligence. Industrial secrets, legal proceedings, military research, all within visual or electronic monitoring range of their properties. Leo whistled softly. That's ambitious and terrifying. And exactly what someone with Volkov's background would orchestrate. This isn't just criminal enterprise, L concluded. It's espionage on a commercial scale. The implications hung heavily in the air. What they had uncovered wasn't merely a sophisticated criminal operation, but potentially a threat to national security. A network of observation posts disguised as ordinary businesses gathering intelligence that could be sold to the highest bidder or used for more sinister purposes. We need to accelerate our timeline, L decided. Leo, focus on communications. If they're gathering intelligence, they're transmitting it somewhere. Find the data flows. On it, Leo confirmed, turning back to his workstation with renewed purpose. L checked her watch. I have a meeting with Detective Carter in an hour. He may have information from local sources that could help us pinpoint active operations. As she gathered her coat, Marcus approached. You shouldn't go alone, he said quietly. If Volkov's people have identified you as a threat, they'll be watching. I'm counting on it, Elle replied. In fact, I'm going to make myself very visible over the next few days. The more they focus on me, the less attention they'll pay to what we're doing here. Marcus's expression darkened. You're making yourself a target. I'm making myself a distraction, Elle corrected. Besides, I'm not as easy to eliminate as they might think. At least wear this, Marcus insisted, handing her what appeared to be an ordinary wristwatch. Panic button, GPS tracker, and audio transmitter. If anything happens, press the crown 3 times. Elle accepted the device with a nod of thanks. I'll be careful, Marcus. This isn't my first dance. No, he agreed, his eyes reflecting concern despite his professional demeanor. But it might be your most dangerous. Miller's Diner looked exactly as it had for decades, unchanged by time or trending restaurant concepts. The vinyl booths, formica tables, and chrome accents remained steadfastly original, creating an atmosphere of stubborn permanence in a world of constant change. For Detective Ben Carter, it was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where coffee still cost less than $1 with free refills, and the waitresses knew your order without asking. He was nursing his 3rd cup when Elle slid into the booth across from him. You're late, he observed, checking his watch. Not like you. Had to make sure I wasn't followed, Elle replied, accepting the coffee Martha poured without being asked. Were you? Yes. 2-man team in a gray Audi. Very professional. I lost them near Copley Square. Carter raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned about armed men bursting in here? Not today, Elle assured him. What have you got for me? The detective slid a manila folder across the table. Summit Heights local operations didn't stop with Thorne's arrest. If anything, they've increased. My narcotics guys report unusual activity at 3 of their properties in the last 48 hours. Deliveries at odd hours, new security personnel, surveillance equipment being installed. Elle opened the folder, reviewing the surveillance photos and incident reports. They're clearing out, she concluded, securing assets before abandoning the location. That's my read, Carter agreed. But here's the interesting part. He tapped a particular photograph showing a distinguished-looking man in his 50s emerging from a limousine. This gentleman visited all 3 properties yesterday. Name's Sergei Volkov. Officially, he's a cultural attaché at the Russian consulate. And unofficially? SVR, Carter said, referring to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. According to my friends at Counterintelligence. Elle studied the photograph with heightened interest. Viktor Volkov's government connection. You know him? I know of him, Elle clarified. He was flagged in several investigations during my time with the Bureau, but always protected by diplomatic immunity. Well, he's taking a very active interest in Summit Heights affairs now that Thorne's in custody, Carter reported. And he's not being particularly subtle about it. Because he's protected, Elle reasoned. And he wants us to know he's involved. A show of force. A message, Elle corrected. That Summit Heights is under official protection. That there are diplomatic implications to pursuing this case. Carter frowned. That complicates things. It confirms things, Elle countered. This was never just about real estate or ordinary criminal enterprise. It's state-sponsored commercial espionage, using property development as cover. The detective let out a low whistle. That's above my pay grade. Mine too, technically, Elle admitted. But it's exactly what my former colleagues suspected about Volkov for years, that he operates as a private contractor for Russian intelligence, providing services that allow for plausible deniability. She gathered the photographs, organizing them methodically. The question is, what are they moving now that Thorne's arrest has compromised their operation? They must have high-value assets or intelligence that needs to be extracted before the network is fully exposed. Whatever it is, it's happening soon, Carter predicted. Word on the street is that something big is going down tomorrow night. Multiple vehicles, heavy security, at the old Blackwood shipping terminal, officially abandoned since 2008, but Summit Heights acquired it through a subsidiary last year. No development has started, but there's been increased activity there over the past week. Elle nodded thoughtfully. Perfect transfer point. Isolated access to both harbor and highway. Minimal civilian presence. Should I alert the Bureau? Carter asked. Not yet, Elle decided. If there's high-level interference, as we suspect, any official attention might cause them to abort. We need to confirm what's happening first. Gather concrete evidence. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Elle smiled, a slight, determined expression that Carter had come to recognize as a warning sign. The old-fashioned way, Ben. I'm going to take a look myself. The Blackwood shipping terminal stood as a monument to industrial decline, a sprawling complex of warehouses and loading docks that had once processed cargo from around the world, but now sat largely abandoned on Boston's outer harbor. Chain-link fencing topped with razor wire surrounded the property, with faded "no trespassing" signs posted at regular intervals. To casual observation, it appeared derelict and forgotten. But Elle, observing from a vantage point half a mile away, could see subtle signs of recent activity. New security cameras mounted discreetly on rusted light poles, fresh tire tracks in the otherwise overgrown access roads, periodic patrols by men whose movements betrayed professional training rather than ordinary security guards. Definitely active, she reported quietly into her communication device. I count 4 visible security personnel, likely more inside or on rotating patrols. Satellite thermal imaging shows approximately 12 heat signatures in the main warehouse, Leo's voice replied in her earpiece. Plus vehicles. 3 vans and what appears to be a refrigerated truck. Refrigerated? Elle questioned, adjusting her position to better observe the loading dock area. Temperature signature is consistent with cooling equipment, Leo confirmed. Whatever they're moving requires climate control. Elle considered this information, mentally cataloging possibilities. Biological materials, certain weapon components, advanced electronics. Or all of the above. Marcus suggested over the comm he was positioned on the opposite side of the complex, providing secondary observation. Volkov's operations typically involve multiple product lines, according to your files. Time to get a closer look, Elle decided. Leo, loop any security cameras covering the northeast perimeter. I'm going in for visual confirmation. Give me 3 minutes, Leo replied, fingers audibly tapping across his keyboard. All right, cameras on sectors 5 through 8 are now receiving recorded footage from earlier today. You have a 20-minute window before the system automatically resets. Elle moved with practiced stealth, making her way down from her observation point and approaching the perimeter fence through a stand of scrub pines that provided concealment. The fence itself presented minimal challenge. Standard chain link with aging supports that had weakened over years of exposure to salt air and winter storms. Finding a section partially obscured by overgrown vegetation, Elle extracted a compact tool from her jacket, a military-grade wire cutter that made short work of the links. Within moments, she had created an opening large enough to slip through, carefully pushing the cut section back into place behind her to avoid immediate detection. Inside the perimeter, Elle moved from shadow to shadow, using abandoned equipment and storage containers as cover. Her movements were measured and deliberate, each step placed with consciousness of potential sound, each pause calculated to coincide with the patterns of the security patrols she had observed. It took 12 minutes to reach the main warehouse undetected. The loading dock doors were closed, but a small personnel entrance on the building's side stood partially ajar. Not carelessness, Elle suspected, but necessary ventilation for whatever operation was underway inside. Drawing closer, she could hear voices, men speaking in hushed tones, their conversation a mix of English and Russian. From her position outside, she couldn't make out specific words, but the tone suggested urgency, purpose, professionalism. Using the camera function on the specialized phone Leo had provided, Elle positioned the device to capture images through the gap in the door without exposing herself. The footage streamed directly to their secure server, allowing Leo to enhance and analyze in real time. "I've got visual," his voice confirmed in her ear. "They're packing what appear to be specialized transport containers. Military grade, designed for biological or chemical materials. Can you identify contents?" Elle whispered. "Negative. But wait." Leo's voice sharpened. "One of the workers just opened a case. Contains, looks like medical equipment, highly specialized, and some kind of samples in cryogenic storage." Elle processed this information rapidly. Research materials, biological samples, possibly stolen from medical or defense research facilities. That tracks with locations of some Summit Heights properties, Beatrice added, her voice joining the communication. 3 are within a mile of major research hospitals, and 1 directly adjoins a pharmaceutical research center working on government contracts. "We need to." Elle's planning was interrupted by a new development. A dark SUV with diplomatic plates pulled into the loading area, its headlights sweeping across the warehouse entrance. From her position, Elle could see the vehicle clearly as it stopped and its occupants emerged. "We have a new arrival," she reported quietly. Sergei Volkov just stepped out of a diplomatic vehicle. He's accompanied by 2 security personnel. And wait! A second man emerged from the SUV, tall, distinguished, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Even in the dim lighting, Elle recognized him immediately. "Viktor Volkov," she breathed. "He's here personally." "That's significant," Marcus observed over the comm. "Someone of his stature doesn't show up for routine transfers, which means whatever they're moving is extremely valuable," Elle concluded. "This is bigger than we thought." She adjusted her position slightly to maintain visual contact while remaining concealed. Through the gap in the door, she could now see Viktor Volkov inspecting one of the transport containers, his expression reflecting satisfaction. Sergei Volkov stood nearby, speaking into a satellite phone with the focused attention of someone receiving important instructions. "Leo, are you getting this?" Elle whispered. "Crystal clear," he confirmed. Facial recognition confirms both identities with 99% certainty. This is solid evidence of direct involvement. "Not enough for diplomatic immunity," Elle noted. "We need to document exactly what they're transferring." She shifted position again, seeking a better angle. As she moved, her boot dislodged a small piece of metal debris, which skittered across the concrete with a sound that seemed deafening in the tense silence. Inside the warehouse, conversation stopped abruptly. "Security breach," a voice called out in accented English. "Check perimeter." Elle immediately pulled back from the door, pressing herself against the warehouse wall as footsteps approached. Her options narrowed rapidly. A retreat would likely expose her to the exterior security patrols, while remaining in place meant certain discovery within moments. The decision was made for her as the door swung open and a security operative emerged, weapon drawn. He swept the area with practiced efficiency, his training evident in his movement patterns. Elle waited until he had taken 2 steps from the doorway, then moved. Years of training and instinct converged in a fluid sequence of actions. Her right hand struck his weapon arm at the precise point to trigger a neural response that momentarily weakened his grip. Simultaneously, her left hand clamped over his mouth to prevent any outcry while her body weight drove him against the warehouse wall. The guard was skilled, his reaction time impressive as he attempted to counter her attack. But Elle had surprise and positioning to her advantage. A precision strike to a nerve cluster at the base of his skull rendered him unconscious before he could alert his colleagues. L lowered him silently to the ground, securing his weapon and communications device. But the encounter had cost precious seconds. Already she could hear movement inside the warehouse. Voices raised in alarm, orders being issued. "Cover blown," she reported tersely into her comm. "Initiating extraction plan Delta." "Acknowledged," Marcus replied immediately. "Moving to backup extraction point. ETA 3 minutes. Elle oriented herself quickly, identifying the most viable escape route. The warehouse's rear exit would lead toward the water, where visibility would be limited but cover would be sparse. The main entrance would take her past Volkov's vehicle and security detail. Neither option promised clean extraction. A third alternative presented itself as she noted a rusted maintenance ladder leading to the warehouse roof. From that elevation, she might be able to cross to adjacent buildings and find a less monitored exit point from the complex. Decision made, Elle holstered the captured weapon and ascended the ladder with swift, silent movements. The metal groaned slightly under her weight. Decades of salt air had weakened its moorings, but it held as she reached the roof and pulled herself over the edge. The rooftop offered limited concealment. Ventilation units, a defunct water tank, scattered debris. Elle moved low and fast, using what cover existed as she made her way toward the far edge of the building. Below, she could hear the security team organizing a search pattern, their movements suggesting professional training and coordination. "They're deploying a standard tactical sweep," she reported quietly. "Two-man teams, overlapping fields of fire. These aren't ordinary security guards. Private military contractors," Marcus assessed. "Likely former Spetsnaz or similar, given Volkov's connections." Elle reached the warehouse's far edge and surveyed the adjacent structures. A gap of approximately 15 feet separated the warehouse from the next building, a smaller storage facility with a slightly lower roof. Under ordinary circumstances, the jump would be challenging but manageable. In the current situation, with armed pursuers closing in, it represented her best option. She backed up several paces, took a deep breath, and sprinted toward the edge. Her foot planted on the warehouse's parapet, and she launched herself across the void, body extending in a controlled arc that carried her to the adjacent rooftop. She landed in a roll that absorbed the impact, coming up immediately into a ready stance. The maneuver had not gone unnoticed. A shout from below indicated that at least one of the search teams had spotted her movement. Within seconds, the sharp crack of a rifle shot split the night air, the bullet impacting the rooftop several feet to her left. "Taking fire," Elle reported, already moving toward the building's far side. "Precision weapons, not standard security armament." "Police bands are lighting up," Leo informed her. "Reports of shots fired at the terminal. Local units responding. ETA 7 minutes. Too long," Elle assessed, ducking behind a ventilation unit as another shot ricocheted nearby. "Volkov will have diplomatic extraction on standby. They'll be gone in 3 minutes maximum." She needed to slow them down to ensure that when authorities arrived, there would still be evidence of what had transpired. A direct confrontation was out of the question. She was outnumbered and outgunned. But there were other ways to disrupt an operation. Reaching into her jacket, Elle removed 2 small devices that resembled ordinary flashlight batteries, non-lethal equipment she had selected from Marcus's arsenal before the mission. The first was a localized EMP generator designed to temporarily disable electronic systems within a limited radius. The second was a specialized smoke device that would create visual cover while releasing a compound that rendered digital camera footage unusable. "Leo, kill the power to the terminal," she instructed on her mark. "Ready," he confirmed. City grid access established. Elle calculated timing and positioning, then made her move. Rolling from cover, she threw the first device toward the loading area where the refrigerated truck was being prepared for departure. Its magnetic casing adhered to the vehicle's metal exterior as she ducked back behind the ventilation unit. "Now," she commanded. The terminal plunged into darkness as Leo cut the power. Simultaneously, Elle activated the EMP device remotely. A soft hum indicated its discharge, followed immediately by the sound of electronic systems failing. Security cameras, communication devices, vehicle ignition systems. In the momentary confusion, Elle moved to the building's edge and deployed the second device, which began emitting a dense, gray-white smoke that rapidly enveloped the loading area. Through her specialized glasses, she could see the infrared signatures of the security team as they responded to the dual threat. Some moving to secure the transport containers, others establishing a defensive perimeter, all hampered by the sudden technological failure and limited visibility. "Extraction route," she requested, already moving toward the building's street side. "Southeast corner," Marcus replied. "Service road access." "I'm in position." Elle made her way across the rooftop, using the confusion below as cover for her movement. At the building's edge, she located a drainage pipe that offered a controlled descent to ground level. The metal creaked ominously under her weight, but held as she navigated downward, landing softly on the cracked asphalt below. Marcus's vehicle, an unremarkable sedan with local commercial plates, waited at the designated point, engine running, lights off. Elle approached from the blind side and, using a prearranged signal, tapped on the trunk before opening the passenger door and sliding inside. "Smooth extraction," Marcus observed dryly as he accelerated away from the terminal, maintaining a moderate speed to avoid attention. "Except for the part where you got shot at." "Occupational hazard," Elle replied, checking the secure phone where Leo was already uploading enhanced images from her reconnaissance. "Did we get what we needed?" "More than enough," Marcus confirmed. Leo's facial recognition software confirmed both Viktor Volkov and Sergei Volkov on site, directly handling controlled materials. Even with diplomatic immunity, that's enough to trigger a formal investigation. And the materials themselves? Based on the markings visible on the transport containers, they appear to be biological research samples. Preliminary analysis suggests they're related to advanced gene therapy research, potentially military applications. Elle processed this information as they navigated away from the industrial zone, merging with normal traffic patterns that would make them indistinguishable from other vehicles. So, they've been stealing research from medical and defense facilities, using Summit Heights properties as observation posts and transfer points. Classic industrial espionage, Marcus agreed, but with a state-sponsored infrastructure behind it. The secure phone vibrated with an incoming message from Leo. "Police and FBI responding to terminal. Volkov's and diplomatic vehicle gone, but truck and material secured. Preliminary reports indicate at least 3 arrests of personnel unable to evacuate. Not a total victory," Elle assessed, but enough to disrupt their operation and provide legitimate evidence for further investigation. Marcus navigated onto the highway, maintaining precise distance from other vehicles. The question is, how will they respond? Volkov isn't known for accepting defeat gracefully. "No," Elle agreed, her expression hardening as she watched the city lights slide past. "He's known for calculated retaliation." The Cambridge facility hummed with activity when Elle and Marcus arrived. Leo sat surrounded by multiple screens displaying surveillance footage, financial trails, and communication intercepts. Beatrice worked the phones, coordinating with contacts in various agencies and financial institutions. The operation had shifted from investigation to active counterintelligence, with real-time developments requiring immediate analysis and response. "Volkov's gone to ground," Leo reported as Elle approached his workstation. "Diplomatic channels report he's left the country on an urgent business matter, but that's clearly cover. His known associates are also disappearing. Private jets, charter flights, sudden vacation plans. They're cutting losses," Elle observed, studying the tracking data. "Standard protocol for a compromised operation." "Not all losses," Beatrice interjected, holding up a hand to pause her current call. "Summit Heights' legal team is working overtime. They filed emergency motions to unfreeze certain assets, claiming they're unrelated to the investigation, and Thorne's lawyers are pushing hard for bail, citing his community ties and misunderstandings about his business practices. "Covering the retreat," Marcus translated, setting down his equipment bag, "securing what assets they can while abandoning those already compromised." Elle nodded agreement. And preparing for the next phase, which is retaliation, Elle said simply. Volkov's operational protocols include systematic response to interference. He'll target the people responsible for disrupting his operation. Meaning us, Marcus concluded. Meaning me, Elle corrected. I'm the visible face of the investigation, the one who personally confronted Thorne, the one whose name appears on the legal documents challenging Summit Heights developments. She moved to the central display, bringing up surveillance imagery from outside her office building and apartment. They'll come for me first, both to eliminate a threat and to send a message to others who might interfere. We should relocate you to a secure facility, Beatrice suggested. The Bureau has safe houses. No, Elle cut her off. That's exactly what they'd expect, and it would limit our operational flexibility. Marcus studied her with the assessing eye of a tactical specialist. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to control the battlefield, Elle clarified. If we know they're coming for me, we can prepare accordingly. Set the terms of engagement. Leo looked skeptical. That's high risk. So is allowing Volkov's network to regroup and continue operations, Elle countered. This is our opportunity to not just disrupt one operation, but to dismantle the entire infrastructure. She turned to face her team directly. We've identified their method of operation. We've documented their key personnel. We've confirmed their objectives. Now, we need to draw out the remaining elements of their network, the ones we haven't yet identified. And you think they'll expose themselves to get to you? Beatrice asked. I know they will, Elle replied with quiet certainty. Men like Volkov can't afford to leave loose ends, especially loose ends that have demonstrated the ability to unravel their carefully constructed operations. Marcus considered this strategy, his military training recognizing its merits despite its dangers. If we're doing this, we do it properly. Full tactical preparation, multiple contingencies, clear extraction protocols. Agreed, Elle said. Leo, I need comprehensive surveillance coverage of all potential approaches to my apartment and office. Beatrice, activate your contacts in local law enforcement. Not for protection, but for rapid response if needed. Marcus, let's discuss specific security measures and response scenarios. As the team dispersed to their assignments, Elle remained at the central display, studying the identified members of Volkov's network. Their faces stared back at her from the screen. Professionals with specialized training, experience, and resources. Men who had operated in shadows for years, eliminating obstacles with ruthless efficiency. They would come for her, of that she had no doubt. The only questions were when, how, and with what force. But unlike their previous targets, Eleanor Vance was not unprepared. She had spent years in the shadows herself, learning the methodologies of organizations like Volkov's, understanding their patterns and protocols. She had left that world voluntarily, seeking a quieter life, advocating for ordinary people against corporate predators. But the skills remained, the instincts intact, the training as much a part of her as breathing. Now those capabilities would serve a dual purpose, protecting her clients and dismantling a network that threatened national security. Elle touched the screen, zooming in on Volkov's image. Your move, she murmured, a cold determination settling in her eyes, the kind of determination that came from absolute confidence in one's abilities and absolute clarity about the stakes involved. The storm was coming, and Eleanor Vance would be ready when it arrived. 3 days passed with the tense anticipation of an approaching storm. Elle maintained her normal routine, arriving at her office early, meeting with clients, reviewing cases, but with heightened awareness of her surroundings. Leo's surveillance network detected increased activity. Unknown vehicles conducting periodic drive-bys of her office building, individuals photographing entry points to her apartment complex, unusual electronic signals suggesting scanning for security systems, the preliminary moves of professionals assessing a target before striking. On the 4th morning, Elle arrived at her office building to find Chloe waiting anxiously in the reception area, clutching a large manila envelope. This was delivered for you, she explained, handing over the package. No courier service, no return address. The security desk said someone just left it and walked out. Elle accepted the envelope with careful hands, noting its weight and balance. "Thank you, Chloe. Why don't you take an early lunch today? In fact, take the rest of the day off, paid leave." Chloe's expression reflected confusion and concern. "Is everything all right, Ms. Vance? Just a precaution." Elle assured her with a calm smile that revealed none of her internal assessment of the situation. "I'm expecting some developments on the Summit Heights case that might require my undivided attention." After Chloe reluctantly departed, Elle took the envelope to her office and placed it on her desk without opening it. She activated the countermeasures against surveillance, then contacted her team via secure line. "Package delivered," she reported. "Classic intimidation tactic. I need a remote scan before opening." "On it," Leo confirmed. "The equipment we installed can do a preliminary analysis. Stand by." Elle positioned the envelope within range of the specialized scanner hidden in her desk lamp, another of Leo's technological adaptations. Moments later, he reported back. "No explosives, no chemical agents, no electronic components. Appears to be documents and photographs only." With this confirmation, Elle carefully opened the envelope. Its contents slid onto her desk. Photographs of her entering her apartment, leaving her office, meeting with Detective Carter at Miller's Diner. More disturbing were images of the Rodriguez family at their grocery store, Mrs. Lee at her restaurant, other clients going about their daily lives. The message was clear: "We are watching. We know who you care about." Beneath the photographs lay a single sheet of high-quality stationery bearing a typed message. "Attorney Vance, your interference in matters beyond your purview has created unnecessary complications for many people. While your dedication to your clients is admirable, you have ventured into waters where the currents are stronger than you anticipate. I propose a simple resolution. Withdraw all pending cases against Summit Heights developments and destroy any materials you have collected regarding their business operations. In exchange, you and your clients will be permitted to continue your lives without further disturbance. Should you decline this reasonable offer, I cannot guarantee the safety of those whose images accompany this letter. The choice, as they say in your legal profession, rests with the plaintiff. You have 24 hours to demonstrate compliance." A concerned observer. No signature, but none was needed. The implicit threat and professional tone identified the source as clearly as a signed confession. "They've made contact," Elle informed her team, photographing the letter and images with her secure phone. Standard intimidation package. Surveillance photos, veiled threats against clients, 24-hour deadline. "Expected move," Marcus assessed. "Testing your resolve before committing to direct action. Also confirming my importance to the operation," Elle added. "They want to verify that eliminating me would effectively end the investigation." "So, what's our response?" Beatrice asked. Elle considered for a moment, weighing options and implications. "We accelerate our timeline. If they're setting a 24-hour deadline, they're prepared to move immediately afterward. We need to be ready." "The trap we discussed?" Marcus confirmed. "Yes," Elle decided, "but with modifications. They're threatening my clients, which means they've identified my primary vulnerability. We need to ensure everyone's safety while making me appear isolated and vulnerable." Leo's voice reflected concern. "That's a narrow tactical window to work with." "It's the window we have," Elle replied with finality. "Marcus, implement security protocols for all client locations. Leo, prepare the tactical environment at my apartment. Beatrice, coordinate with Davis to ensure federal response teams are on standby without alerting Volkov's surveillance." As her team acknowledged these instructions, Elle studied the surveillance photographs again. The angles, timing, and locations revealed professional work, patient observation over multiple days, systematic documentation of patterns and vulnerabilities. Whoever Volkov had assigned to this operation was thorough and experienced. Good professionals were predictable in their methodologies. They followed protocols, employed tested techniques, operated within established parameters. This predictability could be used against them. Elle gathered the materials back into the envelope and locked it in her safe. Then she made a show of appearing disturbed, pacing her office, checking windows nervously, making a visible call on her regular phone that would certainly be monitored. "Ben," she said when Detective Carter answered. "I need to meet. It's urgent." "No, not Miller's. Somewhere less obvious. The waterfront park, near the old bridge. 1 hour." The performance continued as she left her office, moving with the slight hesitation of someone fighting fear, checking over her shoulder repeatedly, taking an indirect route to her car. For anyone watching, and she was certain someone was, Eleanor Vance appeared to be unraveling under pressure, seeking help, making mistakes. Exactly as planned. The waterfront park offered limited cover and multiple approach vectors, a deliberately vulnerable location for someone concerned about surveillance or attack. Elle arrived 10 minutes early, positioning herself on a bench with clear sight lines to all major entry points. Detective Carter joined her 5 minutes later, sitting casually beside her while conducting his own experienced assessment of their surroundings. "You've attracted some attention," he noted quietly, appearing to make casual conversation while his eyes tracked movement at the park's perimeter. 2 observers at the north entrance, another near the parking area. "Professional positioning." "Expected," Elle replied, maintaining the appearance of a worried conversation. "They made contact this morning. Standard intimidation package." Carter nodded slightly. "How do you want to play this?" "I'm implementing countermeasures for my client's safety," Elle explained. "But I need to appear isolated and vulnerable. The ideal target." "Setting yourself up as bait," Carter translated, his expression revealing disapproval despite his professional tone. "That's a high-risk strategy, Elle. It's the most efficient way to draw out the remaining elements of Volkov's network," Elle countered. "We've disrupted their operation, but we haven't identified all the players. This forces them to commit resources we can then document and neutralize." Carter studied her with the concerned eye of someone who had seen too many colleagues take unnecessary risks. "And if those resources include a sniper team or specialized elimination unit, then we'll document and neutralize those too," Elle replied with calm confidence. That left no room for debate. After a moment, Carter nodded, reluctant acceptance. "What do you need from me?" "Official distance," Elle instructed. "Make it appear that you're washing your hands of my situation. Too dangerous, too complex, beyond local jurisdiction. But maintain backup response capability without alerting Volkov's people." "I can do that," Carter confirmed. "Though, for the record, I think you're crazy." A slight smile touched Elle's lips. "Noted, Detective." They parted with a handshake that would appear tense and final to any observers. The severing of an alliance, the withdrawal of support. Elle returned to her car alone, maintaining the appearance of someone increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The performance continued throughout the day. She visited her bank, withdrawing a significant amount of cash, the action of someone preparing for potential flight. She made calls from her regular phone that suggested increasing desperation, reaching out to contacts who might offer protection and being visibly rebuffed. She checked into a hotel under her own name, then appeared to change her mind and returned to her apartment, the behavior of someone without a coherent security plan. By nightfall, Eleanor Vance had painted herself as the perfect target. Isolated, afraid, without institutional support, yet still in possession of damaging information about Volkov's network. To professional observers, she would represent an optimal elimination opportunity, high value, low risk, exactly as she intended. Elle's apartment occupied the 5th floor of a converted textile factory in Boston's Fort Point Channel district. The building's industrial origins provided certain tactical advantages. Thick brick walls, multiple access points, service areas unknown to casual visitors. Over the past 3 days, Leo had transformed the space into a sophisticated monitoring station, with surveillance coverage of all approaches and specialized sensors detecting everything from heat signatures to electronic emissions. Marcus arrived at 8 p.m., carrying what appeared to be ordinary takeout bags, but actually contained additional tactical equipment. Beatrice followed 30 minutes later with several file boxes, cover for the communications gear concealed beneath dummy legal documents. "Perimeter surveillance is active," Leo reported from his position at the dining table, now converted to a monitoring station. I've identified 3 observation posts with direct sight lines to the apartment. 2-man teams, rotating shifts, standard pattern for pre-operation surveillance. Any indication of their timeline? Elle asked, reviewing the tactical overlay on Leo's main screen. Electronic chatter suggests movement tonight, Leo confirmed. They've been scanning our security systems for the past hour, testing for alarms, cameras, response protocols. Professional approach, Marcus observed, unpacking equipment with methodical precision. They'll wait until between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., deepest part of the sleep cycle. Minimal civilian presence in the surrounding area. Elle nodded agreement, which gives us approximately 5 hours to finalize preparations. Beatrice, status on protective measures for our clients. All secured, Beatrice confirmed. The Rodriguez family is at their daughter's house in Providence under private security. Mrs. Lee and the others are similarly protected at locations unknown to anyone outside our team. And Davis, our federal response team, is on standby, Beatrice reported, positioned within 3 minutes of this location, but maintaining communications blackout to avoid detection. Elle absorbed this information with the focused calculation of someone preparing for battle. Leo, I want active monitoring of all approach vectors, with particular attention to the service entrance and roof access. Marcus, final verification of defensive measures and escape routes. As her team executed these instructions, Elle moved to the bedroom to prepare herself. She changed from her business attire into clothing better suited for potential combat. Dark athletic where that allowed full range of movement while providing minimal visual signature. A lightweight tactical vest beneath her outer layer offered protection against knives and some ballistic threats without restricting mobility. From a concealed compartment in her closet, she removed specialized equipment accumulated during her federal service. Non-metallic defensive tools, communication devices undetectable to standard scanners, identification materials for multiple contingencies. Each item was selected with precise purpose, positioned for optimal access under stress conditions. When she rejoined the team, Marcus gave her an appraising look. Just like old times, he observed. Not quite, Elle corrected, checking the placement of her equipment. We have better intelligence, superior positioning, and home field advantage. At 11 p.m., they initiated the final phase of preparation. Beatrice departed first, ostensibly ending a social visit, but actually moving to a secondary observation post in an adjacent building. Leo maintained his position at the monitoring station while Marcus concealed himself in a specially prepared position near the apartment's main entrance. Elle made a show of normal evening routines for the benefit of any observation. Lights in expected sequences, television at typical volume, movements visible through specific windows. At midnight, she enacted the appearance of retiring for the night, leaving only the subtle illumination of a bathroom nightlight. Then the waiting began. At 2:17 a.m., Leo's surveillance system detected the first indicators of approach. Movement in the service corridor, he reported quietly through their communication system. 2 individuals, tactical gear, professional movement patterns. Elle acknowledged with a silent hand signal from her position in the darkened bedroom, where she maintained the appearance of sleep while remaining fully alert. According to their tactical assessment, the approaching team would follow standard protocols for a night infiltration. Neutralize security systems, establish entry, clear the space room by room with priority on the bedroom, eliminate the target efficiently. Second team approaching via roof access, Leo updated. 2 more individuals, similar equipment profile. Standard procedure for a professional hit, Marcus observed. Multiple approach vectors, coordinated timing, overwhelming force. The 4-person team would represent significant tactical capability, likely with specialized training in close-quarters elimination. Elle remained motionless as Leo continued to track their approach. The building's security systems had been subtly modified, appearing functional to external scanning, but actually operating on isolated circuits that fed false data to intruders while maintaining accurate information for the defense team. At 2:23 a.m., the first breach occurred. Leo's monitor showed the service entrance door being expertly compromised, 2 figures entering with practiced coordination. Simultaneously, the roof access team reached the stairwell access point. "They're in," Leo confirmed unnecessarily, moving according to predicted pattern. Service team proceeding toward main living area. Roof team securing the emergency exit route. Elle acknowledged, making a minute adjustment to her position. The trap was set. The targets committed. Now, timing would be critical. The service team reached her apartment door at 2:26 a.m. The lock yielded to their specialized tools within seconds, professional efficiency demonstrating significant experience. They entered with textbook procedure, the first operative covering while the second advanced, movement synchronized by silent signals, weapons equipped with sound suppressors. From her position, Elle could track their progress through the apartment via Leo's surveillance feed, transmitted to the nearly invisible earpiece she wore. The intruders moved with methodical precision, clearing each room according to tactical priority, communicating through hand signals and subtle body language that revealed extensive training. When they reached the bedroom door, Elle made her final preparations. The operatives paused, coordinating their entry with practice signals. The door opened slowly, revealing the dim outline of a figure beneath blankets on the bed, a carefully arranged deception created with pillows and weighted blankets. The lead operative advanced toward the bed while his partner maintained coverage from the doorway. As he reached the bedside, Elle executed her move from her actual position in the room's corner. Years of training and experience converged in a sequence of actions so fluid they appeared choreographed. Her first strike targeted the operative's weapon arm, a precise application of pressure that momentarily deadened nerves and compromised his grip. Before he could react, her second movement neutralized his ability to call out, not by covering his mouth, which would allow him to bite, but by applying specific pressure to the hypoglossal nerve pathway, temporarily paralyzing vocal capability. The operative was good, his counter-movement immediate and technically sound. But Elle had positioned herself to exploit the tactical disadvantages of night operations. His vision compromised by darkness and focus on the bed, his movement constrained by unfamiliar surroundings, his options limited by the need for silence. A controlled sequence of Krav Maga techniques, refined through thousands of training hours and tempered by real-world application, neutralized the threat with ruthless efficiency. The operative was unconscious within 7 seconds, a controlled descent ensuring no sound to alert his partner. The second operative, sensing something amiss when his colleague failed to signal clearance, advanced cautiously into the room. He was met by Marcus emerging from a concealed position behind the door, applying a specialized chokehold developed by military special forces specifically for silent neutralization. Bedroom team contained, Marcus reported quietly through their communication system. 2 subjects secure. Roof team approaching apartment now, Leo updated from his monitoring position. ETA 30 seconds. Elle and Marcus moved to predetermined positions, preparing to receive the second element of the intrusion team. When the roof operatives entered, using the same professional methodology as their colleagues, they were met with precisely calculated counterforce. The engagement was brief, controlled, definitive. Within 90 seconds, all 4 intruders had been neutralized without gunfire or significant disturbance, trussed with specialized restraints, and secured in separate locations throughout the apartment. Subjects contained, Elle confirmed, checking the bindings on the last operative. Leo, status of external surveillance? No indication they have detected the operation's failure, Leo reported. Standard observation positions maintained. No emergency protocols visible. Perfect. Elle moved to the living area where Marcus was already preparing for the interrogation phase. Let's see what our visitors can tell us about Volkov's remaining network. The first operative regained consciousness to find himself secured to a chair in the center of the apartment's main room. Tactical gear removed, identification materials spread on a table before him. Elle sat opposite, studying him with clinical detachment. David Miller, she noted, reviewing his credentials. Former Army Ranger, dishonorable discharge. Currently employed by Sentinel Private Security, a known front for specialized operations. Miller maintained trained silence, his expression revealing nothing. Your colleagues are similarly secured, Elle continued calmly. The observation teams outside remain unaware of your situation. Based on standard protocols, you have approximately 40 minutes before missed check-ins trigger contingency responses. She leaned forward slightly. That gives us time for a professional conversation. I'm not interested in you, Mr. Miller. You're a contractor fulfilling an assignment. I want the operational structure behind this mission, specifically the direct handler who coordinated your team. Miller's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that her approach had registered. Elle recognized the calculation happening behind that gaze. Assessment of options, evaluation of leverage, consideration of loyalty versus self-preservation. Professional courtesy, she offered. Operator to operator. I have no interest in pursuing charges against contracted personnel following orders. My target is higher in the chain. A subtle shift in Miller's posture suggested the beginning of pragmatic reconsideration. Elle pressed the advantage. The materials recovered from the Blackwood terminal have already compromised Volkov's operation, she informed him. Federal agencies are moving against identified network elements as we speak. The organization you're working for is burning assets and evacuating key personnel. Standard protocol when an operation is compromised beyond recovery. She gestured to the communication equipment on the table. Your team was expendable. No extraction plan, no substantial backup. You were sent to eliminate a problem with no guarantee of organizational support if the mission failed. This assessment, accurate based on Elle's experience with similar operations, struck home. Miller's expression revealed the first cracks in professional detachment. I can offer conditional immunity through federal channels, Elle continued, in exchange for actionable intelligence on the remaining network structure. Or, she let the alternative hang unspoken between them, the implications clear to someone with Miller's background. If federal agencies were already moving against the network, cooperation represented the only viable path to avoiding significant legal consequences. After a calculated silence, Miller spoke. What specifically do you want to know? Elle maintained a neutral expression despite this breakthrough. Your direct handler. Communication protocols. The contingency structure if this operation failed. Miller considered for another moment, then made his decision. Sergei Volkov coordinates all Boston operations. Direct line to Viktor Volkov. Communications through encrypted channels only. Burner phones with specialized software, replaced after each mission. And the contingency for this operation. Secondary team on standby. Not for extraction? For mission completion, Miller clarified. If we fail to check in by 0330, they're authorized for direct action. Less subtle approach, meaning building entry with technical support. Flashbang deployment, multiple operators, maximum force authorization, no witnesses protocol. Elle translated. Timeline from missed check-in to deployment. 15 minutes standard. They'll be staged within 2 blocks for rapid response. Elle processed this information, its tactical implications immediately apparent. Marcus, monitoring from nearby, caught Elle's eye. A silent communication passed between them. Assessment of options, tactical considerations, response protocols. Leo, Elle directed. Alert Davis. Federal response team to position for intercept of secondary assault team. Timing is critical. Allow them to deploy, but intercept before building entry. Transmitting now, Leo confirmed. Elle turned back to Miller. One final question. The ultimate objective of Volkov's operation. What were they extracting from those research facilities? Miller hesitated, suggesting he was approaching the boundaries of his operational knowledge. Above my clearance, he admitted finally. But scuttlebutt among the security teams suggested military applications, biological enhancement protocols, something called Project Threshold. This new information registered with particular significance. During her federal service, Elle had encountered peripheral references to classified research under similar designations, experimental protocols involving human performance enhancement for specialized military applications. Thank you, Mr. Miller, she said, rising from her chair. Your cooperation will be noted in official proceedings. As Marcus secured the operative again, Elle moved to confer with Leo at the monitoring station. Project Threshold, she repeated. That's significant. It confirms this wasn't just ordinary industrial espionage. They were targeting classified military research, which explains the resources committed, Leo agreed, and the diplomatic involvement. Alert Davis about this designation specifically, L instructed. It will elevate the priority level for the federal response. As Leo transmitted this update, L checked her watch. The timeline Miller had provided gave them approximately 12 minutes before the secondary team would deploy in response to missed check-ins. Everything now depended on precise coordination between their operation and the federal response team waiting nearby. Marcus, she directed. Standard defensive configuration. Let the federal team handle the secondary assault element. Our priority is securing our existing prisoners and maintaining this position. Marcus nodded acknowledgement, moving to implement these instructions with practiced efficiency. Years of working high-risk operations together had created an operational shorthand between them, complex tactical considerations communicated through minimal verbal exchange. As the minutes ticked down, L performed a final equipment check, ensuring optimal readiness for potential contingencies. The trap had been sprung successfully, the primary threat neutralized, and valuable intelligence secured. But experience had taught her that operations rarely concluded cleanly. Unexpected variables, adaptive opposition, and simple bad luck could transform apparent victory into dangerous complication in moments. At precisely 3:30 a.m., Leo's surveillance system detected the predicted response. Movement at all observation posts, he reported. They're activating emergency protocols. L acknowledged with a curt nod, watching the tactical display as the observation teams converged on predetermined rally points, exactly as professional operators would respond to a compromised mission. Federal team is in position, Leo updated, waiting for secondary assault element to deploy before moving to intercept. The next 7 minutes unfolded with tense anticipation, the team maintaining vigilant readiness as Leo tracked the opposition's movements through their surveillance network. At 3:37 a.m., the secondary assault team emerged from their staging position. 6 operators with tactical gear and specialized equipment, moving with coordinated purpose toward the apartment building. Federal team moving to intercept, Leo reported, monitoring both the assault team's approach and the federal response unit's countermovement. The interception occurred precisely as planned, the federal team surrounding the assault element in a textbook containment maneuver that left no viable resistance options. From their position in the apartment, L's team watched through Leo's surveillance feed as the operation concluded with the secondary team's surrender and detention. All hostile elements contained, Leo confirmed. Federal team reports successful interdiction with no casualties. L allowed herself a moment of satisfied acknowledgement. The operation had achieved its objectives with minimal risk and maximum intelligence gain. But experience tempered any sense of definitive victory. They had disrupted one operational cell of a much larger network, captured valuable intelligence on its structure and objectives, but the primary architects remained at large. Davis is requesting secure communication, Leo reported, indicating an incoming transmission on their specialized equipment. L accepted the call, maintaining professional formality despite their history. Davis, situation report. Clean sweep, the federal agent confirmed. Primary and secondary elements contained. No casualties, minimal collateral awareness. Your intelligence was solid gold, Vance. A brief pause suggested Davis was ensuring secure communication. The designation I sent through, confirmed at highest levels, elevates this from criminal investigation to national security matter. Task force being assembled as we speak. Volkov and Sergei Volkov? Diplomatic channels report urgent recalls to home country, Davis admitted. But with the network identification you have provided, we're freezing assets, flagging travel documents, implementing full-spectrum containment protocols. The implications were clear. While the immediate operation had succeeded, the masterminds had escaped direct accountability, at least temporarily. But their operational capability had been significantly compromised. Their network exposed, their objectives documented for appropriate countermeasures. The clients I was protecting, L began, already being addressed, Davis assured her. Federal protection authorized for all individuals potentially targeted by remnants of the network. Your people will be contacted directly to coordinate security measures. Elle acknowledged this with professional satisfaction. The primary objective, protecting those who had trusted her with their legal representation, had been achieved. The secondary objective, disrupting the criminal enterprise threatening them, had been substantially accomplished. The broader implications, exposure of a sophisticated espionage operation targeting classified research, would now be addressed by appropriate federal resources. We'll need formal debriefing, Davis continued. Your team's direct involvement and first-hand intelligence will be crucial to the task force's effectiveness. Understood, Elle confirmed. We'll prepare comprehensive documentation. After concluding the communication, Elle turned to her team. Each face reflected the particular satisfaction of professionals who had executed their responsibilities with precision and purpose. They had ventured back into a world they had once left behind, applying specialized skills to protect innocent people caught in dangerous circumstances. Well done, Elle acknowledged. Simply knowing they required no elaborate recognition. Phase 1 complete. Documentation and debriefing to follow. As the first light of dawn began to illuminate the apartment windows, Boston awakened to a day like any other. Commuters prepared for work, businesses opened their doors, life proceeding with customary rhythm. Few would ever know of the operation that had unfolded during the night, the network that had been exposed, the threat that had been neutralized. But in a quiet corner of the city, Eleanor Vance and her team began the methodical process of documenting what they had uncovered, ensuring that those responsible would face appropriate consequences, that vulnerabilities would be addressed, that justice would be served, not through conventional legal proceedings in open court, but through the shadowed mechanisms of national security protocols and international intelligence operations. A different kind of justice, but justice nonetheless. And for Elle, a reminder that some battles required more than legal briefs and courtroom arguments. Some required the precise application of specialized skills acquired in a former life, skills that remained sharp despite years of disuse, ready when circumstances demanded their implementation. Skills that had proven decisive when someone made the critical error of underestimating a lawyer with a neat ponytail and a background they should have researched more thoroughly.